Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be getting started here. 5 minutes. If you could please write down your questions you have for our speakers on a note card and hand them to one of the board members. We'll make sure your questions are heard. 5-minute warning. All right, if everybody could please take their seats, we're going to get started here in about a minute and a half. And if you're a board member, if you could just come up to the front very briefly, we're going to take a quick photo and then we're going to get started. All right, Alan, you ready? All right, everybody, we're about to get started here. So if you please take your seats, we got 30 seconds. We're starting 30 seconds. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started, guys. If everybody could please be quiet, we're going to get started here. Welcome to the Atlanta Young Republicans, the largest GOP-affiliated organization in the state of Georgia. We're very happy to have you here tonight. Quick point of clarification. I'm sure that many of you are wondering, where is Gabe Hartwig? Gabe is the president. Where is he? He got called to a last-minute work thing, so I'm acting president. They gave me the nuclear football, so good luck to everybody. But I'm very excited to be filling in for Gabe. We have two awesome guests here tonight. We have U.S. Senate candidate Latham Saddler and Kelly Loeffler. Please give them a round of applause. One quick point of clarification as well. You'll see some note cards around here. If you have questions for our speakers, please fill them out and pass them off to the side to Rosie, and I'll make sure that hopefully your question will get answered. If you want to write your first name on there, I'll give you a shout out so we know who asked the question. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get things kicked off here with our first speaker, U.S. Senate candidate Latham Saddler. Where are you? Right here. Awesome. Well, Latham is an Atlanta native. He went to the University of Georgia, go Dogs, and Georgia Tech. He received, go Dogs and go Jackets. We're all family here. He received the call of duty to serve our country and served as a Navy SEAL. He served in the Trump White House as the Director of Intelligence Programs on the National Security Council, and then was recently, or not recently, but was accepted into the prestigious White House Fellows Program. On that, he worked on the criminal justice reform legislation, the First Step Act, which I think many of you are familiar with. Earlier this year, he announced his candidacy for the U.S. Senate to challenge radical leftist Raphael Warnock. Please welcome Latham.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Alan, and thank you to all the young Republicans here. It's time for a young Republican for this United States Senate seat. And are y'all ready to beat Raphael Warnock next year or what? Absolutely. We actually just got back, literally just came here from South Georgia. We headed out on Sunday and ripped through all of Southwest Georgia. And one thing is abundantly clear is that they are ready for a next generation leader for this job. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit here today. But briefly, I'll give more on my background. Proud son of Georgia, was born right here in Atlanta, but my mom's from a small town south called Bainbridge, Georgia. Was just there for a rally last night. And as Alan mentioned, I went to the University of Georgia, and y'all, while I was there, was having the time of my life, and then 9/11 happened. And it just fundamentally changed my life forever and led me on what ended up being a 6-year warpath to becoming a Navy SEAL officer. So I had a great job lined up in New York City after college. And everybody says if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. And I thought, all right, I'm going to test this thesis as it relates to trying to become a SEAL. And y'all, I get up there and I meet a retired SEAL captain who ran these swim clinics. He mentored guys in the Manhattan area that wanted to become SEALs. And I show up at his swim clinic and told him what I wanted to do. And he goes, all right, I want to know more about you. Send me your resume, and I'll let you know what your odds are at the next swim clinic of getting selected. And so I sent him my resume. And I'm a pretty confident 22-year-old at the time. And he comes over to me, and I won't use his language, but he goes, you don't have a blank chance of getting selected. He said, I've had Olympic gold medalists, Rhodes Scholars, PhDs, D1 captains of their athletic teams compete for these spots, and you are not competitive. And I tell folks at 22, and I know we've got some really young folks in here, it was like having a humble pie smashed in my face, but it was the best feedback I'd ever received. So I ended up going on a 6-year journey to make myself competitive for one of those spots. So I left New York after 2 years, went to Georgia Tech for an international relations master's degree, and started learning Farsi and Dari, which are the languages that they speak in Iran and Afghanistan. Got a fellowship to live in Tajikistan, which is the country that borders all of northern Afghanistan, for a year. Lived with a local family there for 10 months. Learned the language. I ended up backpacking through Afghanistan, did all sorts of crazy things, and came back, and at the ripe age of 28, got back in the best shape of my life and put in my application to the Navy and finally got selected. And so they shipped me out to Coronado, California, where SEAL training is. And y'all, I was like a grandpa compared to these kids going through. I was the oldest officer in my class. I was the only Georgia boy. And I tell folks it was a miracle that I actually made it. I mean, I can recount miracle after miracle after miracle throughout the training. I wasn't a natural in the water as a Georgia boy, but it worked out. And the fantastic thing is the Navy did an unbelievable job of using my background with those languages. So they immediately deployed me to Afghanistan. I came home and then led a 25-man element in Iraq. And at the end of 2016, I was out on some presidentially approved missions, and the folks that were building out Trump's national security team knew about my background, both as a special operator and as a foreign policy guy. Is that good? Sorry about that, folks. They didn't like.
Test, test, test. All right.
Here we go. Sorry about that, folks. So where was I? So I ended up getting selected to come to the Trump White House and serve as the Director for Intelligence Programs for 18 months. I received 18-month military orders to go up there and oversee the Black Ops portfolio. And y'all, we put our adversaries on their heels during our time up there, I can tell you. And working in the Navy, that will always be my dream job. I did 8 years of active duty and stepped away after 8 years for family reasons. I've got a special circumstance in my family that's the biggest blessing in my life. I have a fraternal twin brother with Down syndrome named Ashby, who is the most amazing human being you'll ever meet. And he lives with my parents, and they're not getting any younger. And so my wife and I decided whenever they can no longer care for him, he's going to come and live with us. And so I made the decision to transition out of active duty, and I got asked to stay on board for an extra year at the White House as a White House fellow, totally outside of my comfort zone of national security, and I worked on criminal justice reform. I was part of the team at the White House that got the First Step Act passed, which was the principal policy achievement of the Trump administration in a lot of ways. And I'll never forget my very first day as a White House fellow. I oftentimes share this story. I'm sitting in the Roosevelt room. It's a meeting on clemency. And you had Jared Kushner on one end of the table. You had Van Jones of CNN on the other end of the table. You had a Georgetown law professor that had done 10 years in his youth for robbing a bank, and now as a law professor working on criminal justice reform. And across from that guy, you had Kim Kardashian. And I remember thinking, where the heck am I? But it was just neat to be a part of the way Washington is supposed to work. It was a bipartisan effort by conservative leadership to get something good done for the country. So after the fellowship year, we packed our bags, came home to Georgia, and I was on the leadership team at Synovus Bank, and life is good. I've got a 1-year-old boy and a 4-year-old boy. I'm home more as a father, and things are great, and then 2020 happens. And I think we all know as patriots that something is not right with what's going on in our country today. And I started feeling a very similar conviction that I felt after 9/11 to do something about it, and I didn't know what that something was. And then the election happened, and folks started reaching out to me saying, Latham, you need to consider jumping into this race. And Georgia's always had a proud tradition of having a national security expert in the Senate. We had Richard B. Russell back in the day, we had Sam Nunn, we had Saxby, we had Johnny, we had Perdue, and now for the first time since World War II, Georgia doesn't even have anybody in the Armed Services Committee. So we started exploring this, and candidly, folks, the idea of jumping into this arena, especially as a military guy, it terrified me. I mean, as a military guy, I prefer the shadows, not the spotlight. We had a nice, quiet, private Georgia life, but ultimately made the decision to jump in because the country is worth it. And as someone who's a patriot and loves this country, I want my boys to grow up in the America that all of us grew up in. And the way I see it right now, folks, we have two simultaneous existential threats facing our country. One is the rise of communist China, and this is not a political talking point. I've seen all the briefings in the Situation Room, and they are hungry and focused and eager to supplant us. And it's like we're asleep at the wheel here sometimes in America. And you don't even need to see the classified stuff that I've seen to see how they are eating our lunch economically. I mean, just this past year, they passed us on the global Fortune 500 list of companies. They have 124, we have 121. They just passed us as the country with the most foreign direct investment. That's always been America. They just passed us as Europe's largest trading partner. That's always been us as well. And now you're seeing the Germanys of the world start to hedge their bets that this is going to be a Chinese 21st century, not an American 21st century. So that's one problem. Problem two is right here at home. And it's this pervasive woke movement that is trying to tear our country apart, tear down our history, tear up our Constitution, tear up our institutions, and divide all of us. And, you know, they call it wokeism. It's time for us to start changing the game as conservatives with messaging. We are right on policy and we're right on values, but we get beat on messaging. And we need to call it what it is. And I think this is woke fascism. We need to throw it right back at them as woke fascism. And why do I say that? Because this movement has fascist leanings. The mindset of this movement is you will conform and you will obey, otherwise we will ruin your life, ruin your family, and ruin your business. And candidly, folks, as a patriot, I just can't stand to think that that is where we are in America today. I talk to conservatives and moderates. Plenty of moderates have told me, Latham, I don't feel comfortable sharing my actual views anymore because I feel like the woke mob is going to come out and dox me. Nobody should ever live in fear in this country. And it's time we have leaders that understand that problem, that have experience fighting, and are willing to go up to Washington and fight against this woke movement. So the 3 tenets of our campaign, simply put, are security, liberty, and prosperity. We're going to defend the country, we're going to defend the Constitution, and we're going to defend the American economy. And the final thing I'll say is, especially for this crowd, I was very self-conscious coming into this race at my age. I'm 38 years old. Actually recently found out that I was eligible to join y'all as young Republicans, and I just signed up here tonight, and it was an honor to do that. Thank you. And folks, I thought people would say, he's not long enough in the tooth, it's a U.S. Senate seat and all that stuff, and I thought it would be my biggest weakness. And what I've found out, y'all, is I could not be more wrong. From 3 months of being on the trail, the most common feedback I get is Latham, especially from the older crowd, my parents' generation. They say, Latham, you give us hope. We feel like the youth in this country is lost. They're being taught to hate the country and love socialism. Maybe a young buck patriot like you, if you're our next United States Senator, maybe you can re-inspire our youth and lead them back to loving the country. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you can see members of my team here. We've got young folks coming out in droves to join us in this mission. And so I ask you all tonight, as fellow young conservatives, to join us on this mission. It is all on the line next year for our state, as you all know, and for our country. And Georgia deserves to have the America First policy agenda back in Washington, and Georgia deserves to have a United States Senator that actually has the experience advancing that agenda from the highest levels of government. So my top line is, I'm the country first, next generation conservative that can and will, with your help, beat Raphael Warnock. So let's go knock him out of that seat next year. Thank you all, and God bless you. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Latham. We really appreciate you coming. We're really happy to have you here. It's funny that you mentioned that people tell you that they're afraid to share their political views. I have a pretty strict policy at work. I don't share my political. It's just it's nobody's business. I really don't want to get into it at work. And I accidentally came out as a Republican today at work. So this might be my last fully employed day. So if anybody's hiring, please come find me. I work in commercial real estate, might be out of a job. But in all seriousness, I think that the first question I have, we'll take one question from the audience, but I always get the first question. A lot of times when you see these big national races, candidates will talk about big national issues. What is a local issue here in Georgia that you're passionate about, and what are you going to do about it?
So great question, Alan. Obviously, as a conservative, looking at a federal office like U.S. Senate, I mean, my default is going to be to push, decisions down to the state and local level. That's just going to be my default position. But I'll tell you, a local issue that I care a lot about is this critical race theory movement. And I tell folks all the time that I hope with our campaign that we can bust open the gates for other authentic conservative leaders to step up and serve in all offices. And I believe a school board seat is in so many ways just as important as the seat I'm running for today. Because they have quietly moved in to our schools. And the reason this is important, and then I'll flip it back to you, is like I mentioned, I have a 1-year-old boy and a 4-year-old boy. My 4-year-old boy is on a soccer team. He's out there playing with black kids, brown kids, other white kids, and he doesn't even see race. He doesn't even see it. And the thought that in a year, he could potentially, if he's in the wrong school, be taught to immediately first see race, and that's how you should bucket people, is just heartbreaking to me. So as far as any local issue, one of the ones I really want to back local leaders on is the elimination of critical race theory in our schools, because I think it's dividing our country.
Awesome. Well, thank you. That's a good answer. I think that's a really important issue. I think Honestly, every time you turn on the news, that's probably one of the top 3 things you're hearing about. We do have time for one quick question. We are running a little bit behind on time, so one question we'll just go ahead and take from the audience. So if anybody has any questions, just raise your hand. Somebody's got to have. Hunter, what's going on?
I was going to ask, what are your lessons learned from the 2020 Georgia races, and how is the GOP changing to turn Georgia red again?
Yeah, great question. So the question is, what can be learned from the 2020 races, and what is the GOP doing to win next year? Well, look, I mean, the 2020 races, it didn't go our way, and there's clearly a number of reasons for that. One of the things, when I talked about the umbrella of security, liberty, and prosperity, underneath security, we obviously have national security. I'm going to get up there and wake up at 4 in the morning ready to roar on that front to put our adversaries on their heels. Then there's border security, but then there's also election security, and that is critical. And you know, I'm never going to be in the camp that whines about an outcome about something, but clearly when you have the same 2 counties every single election, I mean, I'm sure y'all stayed up till 5 in the morning waiting to see the outcome, and then all of a sudden it stops. And then we wait and get a different outcome. I mean, the lack of confidence in our election is real, and we're supposed to be the model democracy on the planet. And so I think 202, the legislation that we all took so much flack for, that made us lose our all-star game due to a misinformation campaign, I do believe that secures our election. And again, as conservatives, we've got to start winning the high ground on messaging. And our messaging on that front needs to be, why does election security matter, and why is that not voter suppression? Because election insecurity, that's voter suppression. Because if an election is not secure and you have actual Georgians voting, their votes are being voided out by ineligible voters. And so we have to have secure elections. It's the crux of our democracy, and I think 202 does that. How is the GOP doing to win next year? That's the other piece of the equation. The way I look at it is, we had to make sure the rules of the game are right and just, but we also, as conservatives, have to focus on, what is our strategy to win? What are we going to do to win next year with it all being on the line, with this Senate race and 4 other major statewide races? And that's where I tell conservatives all the time, I say, look, we have got to be unified. We have to have a unified front and mobilize the way the other side does. And I'm uniquely positioned to do that. It's not because I'm special. I've been fortunate to have the background to do it, because I'm the only person in this race that served in the Trump White House for the first 2.5 years advancing the America First policy agenda. So even though conservatives are split over a number of issues, I've yet to have a conservative disagree with me that the America First policy agenda is not the right agenda for the country. And I was up there. I mean, we destroyed ISIS. We took the biggest spotlight in the world and shined it on China. I was up there when everybody was making fun of us about the establishment of the Space Force. And I say, let me tell you something. That is not a joking matter. Current and future wars will be determined by who has space dominance. So my message, as what I intend to be the leader of this ticket next year, is we have a choice to make. We can bicker over our differences as conservatives and lose next year and continue to eat socialist sandwiches, or we can band together into the one thing we all agree on, and that is that the conservative America First policy agenda is the right agenda for the country. And y'all, I can't wait to get up there as your next United States Senator and bring that back to Washington.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Latham. I appreciate it. And thank you, Hunter, for the question. Were you going to stick around afterwards if people want to meet and greet, talk?
I would love to. I'd love to shake everybody's hand here.
Awesome. Well, please stay after the meeting. Come meet our newest member of AYR. But please give a round of applause to Latham Saddler.
Thank you. Alan, I appreciate you.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much again, Latham. We appreciate you coming by. We love having candidates come by and speak. Our next speaker, I think everybody here knows her, is Kelly Loeffler. We're very excited to have Kelly come speak tonight. I'm sure most of you know Kelly, but I'm going to give you a quick background bio here. She was born in Bloomington, Illinois, and grew up on her family farm. She attended the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and got her MBA from DePaul. After that, she became a successful businesswoman and worked for companies such as Toyota, Citibank, and Intercontinental Exchange. And in December of 2019, she was appointed by Governor Brian Kemp to be the next Georgia senator to take over from Johnny Isakson's unexpired term. In her time in the Senate, she had a 100% Trump voting record. Since the 2020 election, she has launched Greater Georgia. Their mission is to register and engage more voters in Georgia, and as we were talking about just a few minutes earlier, to regain trust and integrity in our elections. Please welcome Kelly Loeffler.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you all for that warm welcome. All right, I heard you have really good questions, so I'm going to bang this out and make sure that we have time to answer what you want to know about. Alan's right. I started this because I had a front row seat in 2020. I saw what needed to be done, and after January 5th, when those results came back, I said, we got to do something about this. And so what that turned into was Greater Georgia, and I really leveraged my business experience to do it. But since y'all are young Republicans, and I came here because of business opportunities in this great state, #1 state in the country to do business, and I can attest to that, having helped build a Fortune 500 company right here in Georgia. And I want to thank my husband for coming out tonight. He heard it was at a brewery, so he joined us. So thank you, Jeff. Thanks for everything. He has been so supportive. He's taken the slings and arrows, the same ones I've taken. But look, I came here to look for opportunity. I just gotten my MBA. I had a student loan, a car loan, was trying to pay rent, and I saw firsthand how important conservative policies were, whether it was fiscal or social or anything else was to succeeding, and that's what's made Georgia successful. But what we've seen after the 2020 elections is that slowly and surely getting ripped away. So how do we get it back? That's why I started Greater Georgia. The 3 things that we're working on right now are, first of all, registering more voters. And why am I doing that? Because right now in Georgia, Democrats are out registering conservatives by 7,500 voters a month, every month. Okay? When you look at margins of victory that are 50,000 to 100,000 in a state where 5 million people voted in November, record turnout, we can't afford 7,500 deficit a month. So we've got to do that, and we've already started doing that. Greater Georgia has already registered thousands of voters. And I know for a fact, because we saw it in David Perdue and my election, that we cannot win statewide if this work does not get done. We cannot yield a monopoly on voter registration to Stacey Abrams and her operation. We've got to turn that around, and we're doing that right now. Okay, so we're going to keep registering voters. That's a no-brainer. We know that there are 1 million unregistered, conservative-leaning, eligible voters in the state of Georgia. 1 million. And we have voter contact for over 600,000 of them, and we're going to get that done. The second one is reaching out to communities that are underrepresented in our party, minority communities. I've been holding roundtables. We know that 2 million registered voters in Georgia did not vote in November. So while we had record turnout of 5 million people, 2 million people did not show up, half of which are conservatives. We've got to bring people back, disenfranchised voter, low engagement, low propensity voters. We actually did that in the House District 34 election up in Cobb County just this month, and I'll talk about that a little bit. How we boosted turnout by 23% and increased the margin of victory by 7 points over the 2020 race. It shows you what, if you have a bias toward action, you can make a huge difference. And that's why I'm so thrilled to see so many of y'all here tonight. It's not an election year, it's the summer. You could be doing a million other things, but these are the things that are gonna help us win. And I suspect, because y'all are here, you're successful in other things you do in life because you're taking action. You have a bias toward action and engagement, and that's what you have to do. The third piece is election integrity. So what we saw in 2020 was unprecedented changes in our election. And what does that mean? We saw a mass mailing of unrequested absentee ballot request forms. We saw ballot drop boxes. We saw all kinds of rules being applied or not applied, and not on a uniform basis. And that left us with tons of questions and lots of disenfranchised voters. It made a huge difference in our runoff. We know that 339,000 Republicans stayed home in January that voted in November because they did not trust the outcome of the election. So we have to stand for election integrity. We also know that 74%, this is according to an AJC poll, this isn't my number, 74% of conservatives believe that there was significant election fraud in November. I also did a poll this summer that said 81% of conservatives support Senate Bill 202, the Election Integrity Act. So we're on the right track, but we're just getting started. We can't take any of this for granted. We have to work on implementation of SB 202. That means building out a robust field operation. Let me tell you one thing I learned as a business person coming into politics. It's a business, okay? It is a business. David and my campaign had 1,000 employees by the end. We went from 100 to 1,000, okay? The Democrats, they had 3,000. Stacey Abrams' monthly payroll is $12 million. $12 million. I know, it's shocking. It really is. So, I'm going to back up just because this might be the feedback. I've done this before. So listen, $12 million a month on an outside effort payroll, we had zero. There was no conservative effort standing up to fair fight. And that's why I started this. This is what we have to do, and we have to start today. We have to grow the tent outside of an election year, not inside an election year. We have to stop being transactional with voters. We have to continue the dialogue. We have to have diversity in our party. We have it. We have to celebrate it, welcome it in, and make sure that we don't turn any opportunity away to engage with voters year-round. So I'm really excited to do this because I know we're going to make a difference. In House District 34, Greater Georgia knocked 4,000 doors. We had probably 98,000 texts, and we increased voter turnout by 23% in that House district. And why is a local election so important? Because look what happened in 2020 with mayors that didn't enforce the law, with sheriffs, with DAs, with state legislatures that did or didn't pass important election law reform. That is why local elections are so important, and we have to fight for them every day. So look, I know that y'all come out here because you enjoy the networking and everything, but I also know you're willing to do the hard work. And I would love to have you on the Greater Georgia team in supporting this conservative movement in Georgia and growing it. We have to be proud. We have to speak out and growing it across the state. Because if we don't do it, we will lose the country. And I talk to President Trump routinely, and he is very proud of efforts like this. I've been in Washington talking about this. I've been going around the country. I've been going across Georgia, North Georgia to South Georgia. And look, we may disagree in certain areas, but I think we all agree if we don't mobilize, organize, and become activists, we will lose the country. So I want to thank you for having me here, and let's do some Q&A.
Much for that. We really enjoyed learning more about your organization. I think I got a bunch of questions kind of touching on the same topics. So the first one is, what, at the end of the day, besides the obvious partisan differences, what's the difference between Greater Georgia and Fair Fight?
Okay, do you mind if let's stand up. Let's bring the energy. All right, because we're about action. This is action. Okay, so what's the difference between us and Fair Fight? Fair Fight has really weaponized the courts, and they call it lawfare. And they have used the courts to change election law outside of the General Assembly, which is supposed to make our laws, our election laws in this state. They've been very aggressive on voter registration. We can be aggressive on voter registration, but what we're going to be focused on is engagement and building a field operation using the model. Thank you. Using the model that David and I literally invested hundreds of millions of dollars building out in our campaign. We're dedicating that so that all statewide candidates, local candidates can benefit from a well-oiled field organization. And what does that mean? We've divided up the state into 21 regions. We're going to have operatives in every single region who are paid operatives. We'll have local offices. We'll have volunteers and staff so that when a statewide race comes through, they already have the field operation. When David and I were running, we had to build that out. It wasn't there. When Warnock and Ossoff went through, Abrams had already paved the way. All they had to do was show up and speak. They didn't have to spend the money. Did you know in our runoff, it was over a $500 million investment in 9 weeks in Georgia? So a lot of work's been done, and that's why I decided to start Greater Georgia, is to leverage what we built. So we're going to be more focused on election turnout and not fighting everything in the court. But let me tell you, we're going to be active in the courts too.
Awesome. The next question here is, I think it's very obvious. We've talked about it a couple of times tonight. There's a huge divide in our party. And at the end of the day, what is it that we can do that's going to bring our people together? Because if we're divided, we're obviously not going to be unified going into the next elections, and I think it's going to make that much harder for us to win 2022 and 2024.
Great question, very important question. We have to focus on winning. If we yield to the other side because of internal difference, it's going to get worse than it is today. And we don't know where the country's going to be in 18 months. But if you're not motivated by what you see today to get the liberals out of Washington, to get them out of our state houses, to get them out of our courts, what are you doing? You know, what we have to do is make sure that we are focused on electing conservatives, have the battle in the primary, and once we come out of the primary, we've got to get the liberals out of Washington. We've got to get them out of our state house. And as a former sports team owner, I know that winning solves a lot of problems. And so let's think about what it's like when we're winning. Don't put yourself to the day after the election. Think about if we've lost, okay? That's not where we want to be. Focus on winning, and we've just got to do the work. And I think doing the work will allow us to set aside our differences, because we have a lot more in common than we do differences compared to the other side.
Yeah, I like to say it's a big tent. There's room for all of us in here, you know. Next question. I think it's a really interesting question, so shout out to whoever gave this. How can Republicans vacuum up the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party?
Make sure they become taxpayers.
That's great. I like that. Yeah, I think they might be a lost cause, honestly. Let's see. yeah. Give them a crash course of what it's like down there. What are you seeing right now on the ground in terms of enthusiasm for people in our party?
Awesome question, because I want to brag on it for a minute. I was up in Gainesville about 3 weeks ago, and I was down in South Georgia 2 weeks ago. From top to bottom, from east to west, there is enthusiasm inside a non-election year like I've never seen. I've been involved in the state party since 2010. I co-chaired the Victory fundraising campaign then. And I always say, be careful when you make that first step. You never know where it's going to lead. But I encourage y'all to keep going with the party, because that's what builds the enthusiasm. We went to one event. We were hoping to get 40 people there. We had 120. So just know you're not in this alone. It's people across the state. And by you being here and sharing this message, by signing up for GreaterGeorgia.com's newsletter, by signing up to volunteer, by bringing your friends, we're going to create a groundswell that this state has not seen in years. I mean, 2002, the state was flipped red. We were registering, we were organizing. We can do that again, and we can do it in a much bigger way. This is my DJ right here.
That might be my new job if I get fired tomorrow for coming out as a conservative. Yeah, there we go. So later this year, we have municipal elections here in the city of Atlanta. City of Atlanta might be a lost cause, hopefully not. But what do you think our grassroots focus should be specifically for upcoming municipal elections?
Election integrity. This is a great opportunity to make sure, if there's a way for y'all to get involved, to become poll workers, poll watchers, get involved, learn about this process, learn about the candidates, not just in the mayoral race, but the school board. I mean, look what's going on in our schools. We need school choice. We need our kids to become successful. We need them to graduate from high school. So get involved in municipal elections by knowing the candidates, but get involved locally in the races or the elections and understand how this whole election operation works, because we need y'all. So politics are local. Amen. God bless you, Betsy.
Next question's from Coleman. Thank you for bringing this to me. He says, there are a lot of Republican voters in Asian communities. What will you do to attract those voters? And I don't know what your source is here, but there's 439,446 Asian Americans in the state of Georgia in 2019.
Well, that's a very important question, and that's the second tenet of Greater Georgia, is diversifying and reaching out to communities that have not been by our party in the past. And I recently flew up to New York to meet with an influential leader in the Indian American community. I've spent time with the Korean community here recently up in the northern suburbs. And I think it's important to listen. I went to an event with the Cuban community a month ago. Every community wants to be listened. We need to welcome them in. They're already sharing our values. I mean, we are people who work hard. We make sure that, you know, our families have that opportunity to have great jobs, to have good schools. These are ways you connect with people, but you have to start by listening. So I've held about a dozen roundtables, and then from there, that leads to things like attending the Cuban community's ceremony over here at the Millennium Gate, or other events. So please, if you know of something going on that we could attend, either to register or just meet people and reach out, because too many roundtables I've held, people have said, no one in the party has ever reached out to me, or I've never met an elected official, or I don't know how to get involved, or I feel like they don't want to print materials in my language. We're actually printing our website in Spanish right now, and we're going to expand to other languages. So we have to continue to do a much better job. So please loop us in if there's places we can be.
Thank you for the question, Coleman. The next question is, how are we going to win back the suburbs?
Well, we started in House District 34 2 weeks ago. And how do you do that? First of all, you have to be there on the ground. You have to be local. That's why we're using our 21 region model, so that every part of the state is covered, with a huge emphasis in Metro Atlanta. And why? Because over 60% of the electorate is in Metro Atlanta. And we know that there's a huge opportunity, because I saw it in my own race. There is no question that the suburbs are a fertile ground for us to register more voters. Again, 600,000 voters are unregistered, the majority of them who are here in Metro Atlanta. So we can do better on registration, and we will do that. Engagement, reaching out to women and families, particularly given all the issues around schools, kids being at home and not getting instruction in the classroom, school choice, jobs, economic opportunity. These are positive things that we can have that dialogue with folks about that we didn't get a chance to do in 2020. We got to do it now and not wait till next year.
Another interesting kind of humorous question here. What can we do to drive a divisive rift through the Democratic Party?
Well, they're doing it. Okay? They're fighting over who wants to defund the police more or less. Some people just want to do it a little bit, and then some people just want to abolish the police, okay? So it's already happening. It's things like, you know, it's not just the cultural stuff, it's the overreach on every single policy. The Democrats think that they have a mandate in terms of, you know, every piece of legislation, the trillions of dollars of spending. You know, we could end up spending $10 trillion this year. When I was in the Senate, the federal deficit was at 26 trillion. It's already at 31 trillion. At the end of this year, it's going to be more like 35 or 36 trillion. I mean, this is an unsustainable pace that will destroy the futures of our children and their children going forward. And the Democrats are going to be held accountable for that, but also for the way that our communities are being impacted by their radical policies, like defund the police, like open borders, like standing with Iran instead of Cuba. These are things that we just have to remind people of every single day.
Next question kind of revolves around just patriotism in general. I think a lot of people, if you see on the news, everything is going on in Cuba and things have been going on in Hong Kong. Those people are carrying American flags. Here, we're seeing people burning the American flag. We're seeing people not wanting to celebrate America. So I think it's pretty obvious. Most people here, I think, probably display American flags. But how did we get to the point where people in our country dislike our country more than people outside of the country do?
Well, I think we got there by not realizing how quickly it was happening. And that's why I stood up last year and said, you know, let's put the flag front and center of everything we do, because we can't be silenced. And once you start backing down or getting canceled, that is a bad, or, you know, what's the saying? The only thought that should be censored is the only speech that should be censored is speech that censors your speech. Look, what we have to do is be proud, stand for the flag, never let anyone pressure you into saying, oh, I'm coming out of the closet as a Republican. Look, be proud, speak up, stand up, because if we don't do that, we will lose the country, because it's incremental. This politically correct movement will cost us the country. And we have to stand up and be proud of it and speak out and just, you know, understand that you're not alone. There is a majority that stands with you. We're going to see that, but we have to make sure that every single day we're not backing down from that principle of standing with the country, celebrating our patriotism, teaching our kids, our communities, that that's the right way to live our lives.
Thank you. We have a lot of people sometimes that'll come in here and they're kind of toying around the idea with running for office, maybe just a local office. But a lot of people have trouble figuring out, well, what do I do? How do I do that? Where do I begin? How important is it to you for people in our group, younger Republicans, to run for office? And what's kind of that first step? What should they do to kind of explore that option?
Well, I'll tell you my experience. I had never, ever thought I would run for office. I actually got involved in the state party in 2010, as I mentioned, just by volunteering to co-chair a victory camp effort to raise money for the state party. So do what you're doing now. Get involved, put your hand up, learn about candidates, campaigns, volunteer with your county party, and most importantly, volunteer with Greater Georgia. Because we have a playbook that will help you learn so much about campaigns, about elections, that you'll become, if not an excellent candidate, you'll become an excellent advisor to candidates. So I spend at least a day out of my week talking to potential candidates, talking to people who want to run or they're thinking about joining a campaign, and how to analyze candidates. And I think you just have to jump in. There's no playbook. But get involved now, because what you have to know is that it's so important to start somewhere. It doesn't matter where you start, but you have to start.
All right, this will be our last question. I say the last question for myself. I talked to one of the guys on your staff here tonight about potentially doing a training of some kind for our members here. What would something like that look like? What are the things that our people, or really anybody who's interested, would learn from a seminar of some kind?
So what field training is, this is really where the rubber hits the road. This is how you make a difference in elections. If you care about your neighbors, your friends, your family turning out, you'll do field training. Because what is it? What you're going to learn to do is be trained on the platform. And the platform allows you to register voters and then canvass your neighborhood after you've registered your neighbors. Like I'm doing that. I'm going to my neighbors who are not registered and saying, here's how you register. It's easy. It takes 5 minutes. Then you know who they are. You start to talk to them about the issues. They know who to go to when they're like, hey, what's going on with this? And you become that person. But you also then during an election year, you'll be given like a little region and potentially have doors to knock, signs to wave, postcards to write, phone calls to make. Whatever your skill or talent is, you know, you can say, I prefer to make phone calls, phone banking. And you get trained on that, and you learn a lot in the process. You meet a lot of great people. I cannot think of an experience that I've had where I've met more people, had more memories in a shorter amount of time. It's incredibly rewarding. So please do sign up at greatergeorgia.com. You can see all of our newsletters up there. You can see pictures of our trainings. You're not put on the spot at any of the trainings. And we have a really talented team that is really the best in the business. Keep in mind, we had the largest statewide campaign that's ever been run in the history of the state. So if you want to come learn about elections, we can help you out with that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Please give Kelly Loeffler a round of applause. Thank you so much for coming. All right, I just have a few quick closing announcements. I know everybody wants to get back to the bar, so I'll let you get back to it. If you are a board member, please raise your hand. If you are a new person here who's not a member, if you'd like to learn about becoming a member, please come talk to any of the board members. We'd be happy to share with you some more information or answer any questions you might have about AYR. I'm going to have a couple board members come up and give quick updates. First is our VP of Membership, Winslow Jones.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for coming out tonight. I just want to go over a few reasons. Am I good? In the camera? Am I good? Okay, good. gotta be in my spotlight and in the frame of the camera. Anyway, I want to just go over a few points to tell you about the value of becoming a member of AYR. I just got elected earlier this year as VP of Membership. I've been involved since January 2020. So one of the benefits is actually you get to vote and serve on the board. So if you are interested in any leadership opportunities in the Young Republican sphere, they're available here. It could also be a stepping stone towards other leadership opportunities in other Republican organizations as well. Also, you get a cool little name badge, so you're officially part of the club when you become a member. You also get really huge discounts to our paid events, such as the Christmas party at the end of the year. And then lastly, you are supporting an organization like this that helps us actually, the money goes towards efforts to help Republicans get elected. And as we know, that's really important at this day and time. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming out.
Thank you, Winslow. Is Joe here tonight? Joe, where are you at? We want to give a quick update here on Community Affairs. Joe is our Vice President of Community Affairs, and he's here to talk about Community Affairs.
Thank you, brother. Hey, how you guys doing? All right, I'm going to make this real quick. All right, so this may be a reminder for some, an introduction to others, but Atlanta Young Republicans has partnered with a nonprofit organization that is a national nonprofit, but has local chapters across the country, one obviously being here in Atlanta. It's called Back on My Feet. It's offering volunteer and mentoring programs. We have a kind of like a streamlined process for our members. So if you want to sign up, become a mentor or volunteer, you're going to be helping people essentially get back on their feet, people who are on the brink of homelessness or are actually homeless currently. They need people who can provide professional mentoring skills, financial skills, what other kind of interviewing skills, any kind of professional skills that you can provide as far as the mentoring program goes. If you're interested, kind of staying in the theme of what Ms. Loeffler was talking about, you got to get there in the communities where we don't have much presence. It's a lot of non-traditional communities where we don't have good presence and we don't have a very good name. But when I went out there and I actually did the volunteering that day or for a couple of days, I can guarantee you I did not get any backlash, I didn't get any hesitation, no animosity. People were actually reaching out to other people like, hey, this guy's a Republican, you gotta meet this guy, you gotta meet that guy. So don't be afraid to come out and meet people who necessarily haven't really been given a good chance of knowing what conservatism really is. So again, if you're interested, I will be around signing people up. Just need your name, your number, and an email address. Other than that, let me know.
Thank you, Joe. All right, just the last few announcements. We put this out in the email yesterday, but as we said earlier, there is a municipal election coming up, and Fulton County GOP is looking for poll watchers and poll workers, and apparently they're paying $2,500. That's what we were told. They're paying something apparently. If you'd be interested, you talk to the Fulton County GOP if you're interested in helping out. Talk to her. Okay. We do have a couple of events coming up over the next couple of months. Not this weekend, the next weekend on July 31st, the Georgia Young Republicans are hosting the annual award ceremony and fundraiser at the Ivy. Tickets are $10. Our next happy hour social, which I know everybody here likes to drink, is going to be at the Family Dog. I'm going to move over here. At the Family Dog on August 12th. That's over kind of on the east side of town. Then our next meeting, this is very exciting. I'm sure everybody here is familiar with the Babylon Bee. We have Kyle Mann, who is the editor-in-chief of the Babylon Bee, coming here to talk about real news. That'll be really interesting coming from them. But that should be very exciting. That'll be here on August 19th. Last couple announcements here, folks. We have our member appreciation event on September 9th at the Vineyard Wine Market. We do that every year. Another benefit of being a member, the tickets for that are $25 if you're a member and $45 for non-members. And you get wine included in whatever charcuterie is. I don't know really what that is, but we'll have it there. And then last thing, we have our Christmas party coming up in December, on December 11th at Buckhead Art Company. Be looking alive on the website and on Facebook over the next couple weeks. We're going to be posting a ticket link. It's all you can drink. It's included, free alcohol, or included with your ticket. It's going to be a great time. But if you have any questions about any of those events, please come find me. I'm the VP of Events, so I should be able to answer hopefully most of those questions. But thank you all for coming tonight. We had a great time, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event. Board members and speakers, if y'all come up here, we'll take one more photo. Everybody else, you're dismissed.